Hello and welcome to Malcolm and Lehman's garden. I'm just going to wait for a couple of minutes for people to join us, and while we're sitting here I'll show hopefully a restful scene of our shishiadoshi, which quite often I like to sit here, sometimes like just at the moment in the sunshine, and look around and appreciate the garden. So the shishiadoshi in fact means deer scarer in Japanese, and so one of the things I've not been able to see in the garden recently has been any deer. Actually, I haven't seen any before either, so in a way that hasn't been too much of a distraction. So let me introduce myself. My name's Malcolm. I've been working for Earthwatch for almost a year now, and Earthwatch is a great charity. It has the environment in its sort of sights, and it has science at its heart. And what I'm talking about today is my nature space, and my nature space is something that's being thought about by Naturehood. And Naturehood is a community project which is trying to reverse the wildlife decline in UK gardens, basically. So if you want to look at Naturehood, you can find the website for Naturehood on My Naturehood UK, and also there's a Facebook page and all of those other great things. So we'll just have one more quick look at the shishiadoshi as the sun shines down brilliantly, and then I'll start to take us on our walk around the garden. First of all, I try and give a little idea of what I'm going to walk around. So this is a scan around the garden with a pond, other bits and pieces back to the house. Right at the beginning, in the house, we've got a hole. So I think that's a masonry bee. So it's one of these things that I always thought it'd be great if you could harness that energy, so that instead of having to drill holes, you could use masonry bees. Probably a little bit hopeful. However, we'll walk on now to the pond. Now, before I joined Earthwatch, I dug the pond, and then as I joined Earthwatch, I used to spend quite a lot of time talking with Ben and others about what I should do to make it a little bit more of a wildlife haven. So as you can see, it's quite a formal shape. But what I've done is to, this year, put in a lot of indigenous British plants. So the water lily is the only British water lily, and that's growing nicely. One flower has just kind of submerged, another one has come out. Flag iris, marsh forget-me-nots, all sorts of different plants along the edge here that I hope are going to prosper and multiply as the year goes by and as the next year goes by. The other thing I've tried to do, what I hope will happen, is that we'll tempt in some wildlife. We saw a little tiny frog jump down the ramp at the far end about a couple of weeks ago, so hopefully that will bode well for next year. And looking at the pond now, talking with Ben and others, I can see there's some things I'd have done differently. So this is one of the great things I think about everybody's nature space, is it's not perfection, it's seeing what you can do that might make a bit of a difference to the wildlife that might come in. So yeah, I put in a couple of ramps at the far end, and also I wish I'd built the area for the marginal plants a bit wider. I maybe had a shallower end as well, but at least if it's really deep winter, then animals will be able to survive at the bottom of this pond, because it's about a couple of feet deep, so it's fairly deep. So moving on from the pond, I should say that this garden has been kind of transformed in the last 3 or 4 years we've been here. Inspiration all coming from Li Min, my wife, more or less. And so she has, we kind of split the whole thing up half and half. She has all the ideas and I kind of have to build them. But that works very well. A couple of bird boxes there. So we did have some viewings earlier on. We had a couple of birds go in and out with some nest material. But unfortunately, we never really completed on the contract, as it were. But hopefully next year, we'll get a few more things, a few more birds interested, and there'll maybe be some families raised there. Fruit tree, 3 pairs, which is kind of exciting. Normally there's only 2 in a pair, isn't there? But anyway, and then this other pear tree has got a lot more fruit growing this year. And then through to the patio. Now the patio, of course, in one way is a kind of a dead space. But again, Li Min has felt it's really important to have lots of pots so that we can still grow flowers, even though there's not the ground to plant them in. Walk down the patio a bit, and we've put in another couple of fruit trees this year. Might get a whole apple, which will be nice. But again, of course, the flowers as well are good for pollinators. And then there's a kind of shed, which has got, well, a whole load of stuff in it. Different flowers growing here. One thing I really am quite excited about is a little way along here we've got a nest, which is a bee's nest. So you can just see one bumblebee there, and as long as we don't get too close, they don't worry about us. In fact, they're very well behaved bees, so I'm very pleased about that. And moving on a little bit, this bush here, salvia bush, is a magnet for the bees. So a few days ago, I did my Naturespace challenge and spent time looking here, and yeah, amazingly enough, all the bumblebees are not there today, but the other day they were covering this bush. And the last little bit of the garden, again, which we can go around, is the vegetable patch. Now, this was actually a place for parking car. So again, we've kind of tried to turn it into something a little bit more fertile, as it were. Put a couple of raised beds with varying success. We had some nice onions already. And then at the end of the garden, we've got the compost heap. So the compost heap, kind of a tip that I was picking up the other day, because obviously this is a little plastic bin, which is hardly going to be enticing to anybody, but I've opened the gate now at the bottom, so then hopefully that will entice animals, and hedgehogs would be a great thing, because we do have an abundance of supply of slugs, which I'm sure they would really enjoy. And then just beside it, this is actually some heat insulation, which is lamb's wool. I leave out well, it's sort of not really been used that much, but the one before was ripped apart by the birds, who then used it as nesting material, which is all quite nice. So I think what I can say about our nature space is that we've moved into the house, we've gradually learned about gardening. My wife, when she likes to move flowers about, she'll talk to them, explain to them they're going to a better place, move them to another place, and invariably they thrive. So obviously this works. But we're learning as we go along, and over the last year, what can we do to make our nature space both more appealing to wildlife, while still maintaining the tranquility of the overall space. And of course, it's entirely possible to adapt the two. And especially the pond, I'm really excited about that and hope that's going to transform in the future. Well, bringing us back to the Shishiyodoshi. So there we have it. That's a small tour of my garden. And what I'd like to say is that clearly I'm not a person who's focused on the nature space for wildlife in the first instance. But I think, just like everybody, there's little things we can do that improve the places that the birds and the bees and other animals can exist in our gardens, bring us pleasure, at the same time being incredibly important for pollinating and all those different things. So yeah, that's my space. I again recommend everybody to Naturehood, which is just such a fantastic initiative where, you know, with everybody's help, we can hopefully reverse the wildlife decline. And worth saying that Naturehood has really got, I would say, two major thrusts. One, it's a great help to everybody who wants information on how they can make their outdoor spaces better. But also it's the scientific research that comes from that. So when we fill in our nature space challenges, that information provides a great source of things to do to actually help our environment and our people and our plants and animals. So I'd like to say thank you very much and thanks for watching, and bye for now. Bye-bye.